Poe Dameron stood motionless before the towering sculpture of his mother, Shara Bey, in the New Republic Defense Fleet War Museum on Hosnian Prime. The bronze figure captured her mid-stride, her eyes set on a distant horizon, forever a pilot, forever a warrior. His chest felt tight, his throat constricted. His eyes were full, but did not spill over. He took a slow breath, steadying himself, but the weight of loss never truly faded. A firm hand landed on his shoulder. Poe turned to see Wedge Antilles standing beside him. The legendary pilot said nothing at first, just offered a small, knowing nod. Poe swallowed. His voice was low, edged with restraint. "I miss her." "Of course you do," Wedge replied simply. For a long moment they stood there, side by side. One a son of a war hero, the other a veteran of too many battles. Both carried the burden of memory, of loss, of the kind of war that never really ended. As Poe composed himself, Wedge finally broke the silence. "So, how did your briefing go with Republic Command?" Poe let out a sharp exhale, his jaw tightening. "Frustrating," he admitted. "They don't want to hear it. They don't want another war. They think the First Order is just a few Imperial warlords playing dress-up." Wedge sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He had seen it too, the Senate's reluctance, their obsession with peace at any cost. "No one wants another war, Poe." "Yeah, well, what's it going to take for them to realize we're already in one?" Poe's frustration bubbled to the surface. He turned toward Wedge, his voice firm but laced with desperation. "My squadron ran into a First Order fleet, larger than anything they should have. They're violating the Galactic Concordance, stockpiling ships, and amassing weapons. And what does Republic Command do? File a complaint." Wedge nodded, his expression unreadable. Deep down, he agreed. He had spent years believing the war was over, that the New Republic could move forward without the shadow of another empire. But that was a lie. He had seen the same reports Poe had. And now, standing here, he could feel the tides shifting once again. Poe inhaled deeply, reining in his anger. "I spoke with General Organa Solo." Wedge's eyes sharpened. "And?" "She invited me to join the Resistance," Poe said, his voice steady. "I accepted." Wedge studied him carefully. "I just resigned," Poe added. There was no hesitation in Poe's words, no second guessing. This was not a rash decision. He had made up his mind. Wedge didn't seem disappointed. In fact, he looked relieved. "Good," Wedge said after a pause. Poe frowned slightly. "You're not going to try and talk me out of it?" Wedge smirked. "If your mother were alive, she'd have done the exact same thing." For the first time in a long time, Poe felt lighter. Wedge placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, kid." Poe nodded. He didn't need any more reassurance. The fight was calling him, and this time, he knew exactly where he belonged. Poe looked back at the statue of his mother. The light of the museum's skylights cast long shadows over the bronze form of Shara Bey, making her seem larger than life. He felt something shift inside him. Not sadness, not loss, but purpose. "I hope so," Poe finally said, exhaling as if letting go of a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying. Wedge stepped beside him, arms crossed. "Leia's right. The New Republic is too slow to act, too hesitant. The First Order doesn't hesitate. They're patient, methodical, and they're getting stronger by the day. By the time the Senate gets their heads out of the sand, it'll be too late." Poe turned to Wedge, searching his expression. "Then why are you still here?" The older pilot chuckled, shaking his head. "I ask myself that every day." His smile faded slightly. "I fought for this government. I believed in it. Still do. But the people in charge now, they don't understand what's coming. Someone has to help them see it." Poe clenched his jaw. If General Organa Solo couldn't do it, who can? I can't sit around and wait for them to figure it out. You shouldn't, Wedge agreed. He hesitated, then added, I'll tell you this, Poe. When Leia asks for help, listen to her. She sees things others don't. She always has. Poe nodded. He had already made his decision, but hearing Wedge agree with him, even subtly, made it feel right. I leave tonight, Poe said. Leia's sending me an escort. I don't know where I'm headed first, but she's already got missions lined up. And your squadron? Poe frowned slightly, shaking his head. I told them before the briefing. Some of them, they don't get it yet. Others? I think they know what's coming, but they're scared to act. Kun and Arana are joining me. I see, Wedge said. Well, for the others, they've been told for years that war was over, that they don't have to fight anymore. No one wants to admit that was a lie. Yeah, well, Poe muttered, I don't have that luxury. Wedge smirked, nodding toward the exit. Then let's get out of here. You can buy me a drink before you go rogue. Poe chuckled. I think you owe me a drink, old man. I'll let you believe that, kid. The two pilots walked away from the memorial hall, stepping out into the bustling cityscape of Hosnian Prime. The skies were filled with commercial traffic, transport lanes winding through towering spires, the heart of the Republic pulsing with activity. It all looked so normal, so peaceful. But Poe knew better. Poe Dameron was born into a family of war. His parents, Shara Bey and Kes Dameron, were both heroes of the Galactic Civil War, rebel fighters who played crucial roles in the fall of the Empire. As the rebel fleet clashed with Imperial forces in the Battle of Endor, Shara provided cover for General Lando Calrissian during the desperate attack on the Death Star's reactor core. Meanwhile, his father, Kes, was on the ground, fighting alongside General Han Solo in the mission to destroy the shield generator. Together, his parents had helped bring about the Empire's downfall, but victory didn't bring peace right away. Even after the destruction of the second Death Star, the war continued. Imperial remnants fought to maintain their grip on the galaxy, forcing Poe's parents to remain in service, keeping them away from their only son for years. But as the war wound down, they chose to leave it behind. Poe's family settled on Yavin 4, the former rebel base, seeking a quiet life away from war. There they planted a rare Force-sensitive tree, a gift from Luke Skywalker himself. As Poe grew up, he played beneath its branches, unaware of its deep connection to the Jedi and the greater mysteries of the Force. But more than the Force, Poe was drawn to something else, the sky. His mother, who had spent years as a pilot, often took him along on her civil defense patrols. She didn't just tell him stories of war. She showed him what it meant to be a pilot. At just 6 years old, Poe sat in the cockpit of her old RZ-1 A-Wing interceptor, his small hands gripping the controls as she guided him through the motions. By the time he was 8, he was already dreaming of flying among the stars. But that dream was nearly shattered. When Poe was 10 years old, tragedy struck. His mother, his mentor, his hero, died unexpectedly. The loss hit him hard. The woman who had inspired his love for flight was gone. His father, Kes, was grieving too, but instead of bringing them closer, it pushed them apart. Poe was adventurous, reckless, just like his mother. But Kes, who had seen war firsthand, wanted to protect his son. He became overbearing, trying to keep Poe grounded, to steer him away from danger. But Poe didn't want to be grounded. Frustrated with his father, desperate to escape Yavin 4 and carve out his own future, Poe made a reckless decision, one that nearly cost him everything. He joined a group of spice runners. At first, it was just about getting off-world. Poe saw an opportunity to fly, to see the galaxy, to escape his father's expectations. What he didn't realize, at least not right away, was that these so-called traders weren't legitimate. He had joined the Spice Runners of Kijimi, a criminal organization dealing in illegal goods. At first, Poe was blinded by the thrill of adventure. He piloted starships through dangerous trade routes, learned how to outmaneuver New Republic patrols, and gained the kind of real-world experience no academy could teach. But the deeper he got, the more he realized this wasn't what he wanted. Smuggling and crime weren't his path. He wanted to fly for something greater. So, he escaped. Returning to Yavin 4, Poe finally faced his father. It wasn't easy. But with Kes pulling some strings, Poe enlisted in the new Republic Navy. He was given a second chance, a chance to fight for something real. But because of his criminal past, it wasn't easy. He had to prove himself. He was placed under the tutelage of Wedge Antilles, one of the most legendary pilots in the galaxy. Under Wedge's training, Poe excelled. He wasn't just good. He was one of the best students Wedge had ever trained. In the years that followed, Poe became a top starfighter pilot, earning the respect of his fellow pilots and the attention of Republic Command. But something wasn't right. The First Order was growing in the shadows. Poe saw what others ignored: violations of the Galactic Concordance, increased military activity in hidden sectors, the slow but undeniable return of an old enemy. And when the New Republic refused to act, Poe made his choice. He resigned from the Navy, and he joined General Organa Solo's resistance. Poe Dameron wasn't just a pilot anymore. He had become one of the most trusted operatives in the resistance, answering directly to General Organa Solo herself. His sharp instincts, daring maneuvers, and refusal to back down made him invaluable, not just in the cockpit, but on the ground as well. So when the First Order launched its devastating siege of Coruscant, striking at the heart of the New Republic, Leia Organa Solo was not surprised. She had been sounding the warning for some time. The New Republic had been paralyzed, caught off guard as the First Order's fleet descended upon the former Imperial capital world. Within days, Coruscant fell, and the planetary defense was wiped out. The First Order's presence was now undeniable, and war was inevitable. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. Leia received an urgent message. It came through an old, unused Rebel Alliance channel, one that hadn't been active since the days of the Galactic Civil War. The encryption was ancient, but the call sign was unmistakable. The sender was Lor San Tekka, an old explorer, a keeper of lost histories, and a man Leia had trusted once before. The relayed message was brief, from an unknown speaker, but its importance was clear. I have information smuggled from Coruscant vital to the survival of the galaxy. But you must act quickly. The First Order is watching. The answers you seek are on Jakku. Leia needed someone she could trust. She turned to Poe. Go to Jakku, Leia commanded. Find Lor San Tekka and retrieve the message. Poe studied the coordinates. They pointed to a remote, barely charted location on Jakku. A trap? Poe asked. Leia sighed. Possibly, but if it's real, it could change everything. The Resistance had spent months gathering intelligence on the First Order, but much of their knowledge was fragmented. If someone on Coruscant had managed to survive the occupation and smuggle out classified data, it could mean fleet locations, military operations, or even the First Order's leadership structure. Whatever it was, Poe knew one thing. They couldn't afford to ignore it. Leia placed a hand on his shoulder. Find them, get the message, and get back in one piece. Poe smirked. Can't make any promises. Leia rolled her eyes. Just try. Moments later, Poe was heading for his X-Wing. BB-8 chirped excitedly beside him, already rolling up the fighter's boarding ramp. All right, buddy, Poe said as he strapped in. Let's go meet our mysterious friend. With a roar of engines, his black and orange X-Wing shot into hyperspace.